of Consciousness. Brought to you by Forever Family Foundation. On the web at foreverfamilyfoundation.org.
I call your name. The echo is haunting. The echo is always the same. I call your name. The echo is haunting. An echo can never be changed. So I call your name.
Good evening and welcome to Medium Insights on Signs of Life Radio, the show that's held the second Thursday every month, usually hosted by Roman Karpishka, who couldn't be here tonight, so I'm Tom Gould and I will be with you this evening, and I'm very excited to talk with our guest tonight, Connie Fusella, who is a certified medium with the Forever Family Foundation, and she's had spiritual awareness and experiences since she was a small child. And it was in her 20s when she had a severe allergic reaction to medication that led to a near-death experience. And since then, her abilities have been more prevalent and growing. And I've got to say, yeah, she's become one of the very go-to valuable mediums for the Forever Family Foundation, has been with us for several of our grief retreats, including the next one. She will be with us in California this October. It's the weekend of October 18th, and there are still a few spots open for that. These grief retreats fill up pretty quickly. And I must say, on a personal note, I have noticed we did a grief retreat in Chester, Connecticut last summer, and Connie was there. And after a power outage in the guest house, we gathered around a table and did what they call table tilting, getting messages through a table. And I noticed that night that it was Connie's energy that really got the ball rolling on this. When she wasn't at the table, we didn't have much in the way of results. When she came into the room and sat at the table, it was like magic. And when I think about it, Connie's been relatively new in the last couple of years. She was certified with the foundation, and ever since she became a member of the foundation's medium corps, we have been getting a lot of more very highly qualified mediums. I hope you don't mind, Connie, that I'm going to give you credit for this, but I think that your energy kind of drew to us some great mediums, because we've been doing medium certification for years and years and years. And I have to say, we had a pretty dry spell a few years back. And but since Connie's been a medium with us, we have added several very, very talented mediums. So it's a stretch, but I'm going to give you credit for that.
Well, thank you.
And one thing I need to mention also is Connie's website is meaningfulmessages.info. Meaningful Messages, all one word, .info. So if you need to reach her. Also, because this show is Medium Insights, we will take phone calls, but there will be no medium readings tonight. That's next Thursday. We have a program, Mediums and Messages, hosted by Joe Peretta. So if you're looking to get a reading, come back next Wednesday and join in. But if you have a question for Connie, if I can stop talking long enough, you can call in and ask those questions. The number here is 1-888-627-6008. And I don't know if we've got video or whatever, but that's that. So with all of that being said, let's welcome Connie. Connie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How you doing, Tom? I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's great to talk to you again. Mentioned you've been to several retreats, and we've had a great time while you're there, and people have been blown away by your abilities. So that's tremendous. Uh, Let me just hit in on one of the things I mentioned early in the introduction of that you had a near-death experience in your 20s. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've actually had three. So the first one that I had, and two of them were in my early 20s. The first one that I had, and they were all reactions to medication. So the first one kind of led me into anaphylaxis, and the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, and I was sitting on the floor, Indian style, with my legs crossed, and a light being figure approached me. I couldn't really make out any face, but just a glowing, person approached me and put this big book in my lap. And I could see that the binding of the book was leather and kind of worn, and the pages were like parchment paper, but the papers were glowing, like the light was going straight up. And as I looked at the book, the pages started flipping very quickly, and it was from the day I was born until present day. And then, I woke up, and, afterwards I had told my mom, I was like, wow, I had this really strange dream. And I was describing, things, images that I had seen, like before I was a year, 2 years old. And she, validated what I had seen. And I realized now I had, what's called a life review. But, at the time, being young and not into this world of, psychics and mediums and near-death experiences, I had no idea. I just thought I had a really cool dream. Interestingly enough, after I had that experience, I started experiencing what it's called, I believe, sleep paralysis. So this would happen to me like a couple of times, few times a month. And that's where, you're sleeping and all of a sudden you can't move and you're kind of conscious, but you think you're sleeping and you can't move, you can't scream. And sometimes it can be terrifying, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so that was happening to me. And the first time that it happened, I could see like a figure like over me, and I could hear, you need to get up, you need to lift yourself up. And, I was like, okay, yeah, I need to get up, right? I couldn't move. And this started happening over and over again. And then I came to realize that the person I was seeing was actually me. And I was like out of my body trying to pull myself up. And I kept hearing, you need to lift yourself up. Well, now, all these years later, and it's so funny, as you probably know, I've been writing my book for God knows how long now, right? But I was told by Spirit that I'm going to realize things and discover things about myself as I'm writing this book. And I'm still discovering things. And I think that's why it's taking so long. But what I know now is that those words, you need to lift yourself up. Spirit was telling me energetically I needed to lift myself up. I needed to lift my vibration up, right? In order to do this type of work. But of course, I didn't understand that back then. I wasn't doing this type of work or didn't know anything about it. So, I didn't get the memo. And a few years later, I had a second NDE where another allergic reaction to medication, and it landed me in the hospital where I went into ventricular cardiac arrest.
Oh.
And so I had an experience then of, I flatlined, and I had an experience of, being out of my body, floating near the ceiling, seeing the doctors and nurses work on me. And then next thing you know, I'm in that proverbial tunnel, right? Which I would describe like an MRI. That's about how big it felt to me.
Uh-huh.
And I was going feet first into this light, and it felt like a Disney ride, one of those virtual rides where, you think you're going really fast, but you're not moving. It was like something like that, going into this, like I could see like a round, like glowing, hole at the end. And so just as I got to that ending, and my feet did what I would call, I touched like the glow, as I like to say. And it was sort of like going into jello is how I would describe it.
Wow.
Right. And as soon as that happened, they must have used those defibrillators and brought me back. So, okay. So I had that experience, and again, in my early 20s. But what happened shortly after that, why I say this one kind of, put me on my path really, is, after I returned to work, all of a sudden my normal routine of walking a couple blocks and getting lunch. I was working in New York City at the time. All of a sudden, I find myself one day just kind of taking a different route and going down some streets I hadn't gone before. And I came across the psychic shop. And I was drawn in, and I asked the guy, like, what goes on here, right? And he told me, oh, people give readings, they predict your future. So I went in and got a reading, and I was hooked. So something was so fascinating about this, and so I spent a couple of lunch hours, a couple times a month to get readings. And it's in that shop in 1991 that I bought my first deck of tarot cards. So, I feel like I was, led toward this way, to the metaphysical, each time with the near death experiences. And, the third time I was a little bit older, I had an after effect of surgery, and the next thing I knew, I'm in what I would perceive as to be heaven. I was raised Catholic, so I'm kind of like in the clouds and in this beautiful place with beautiful colors, and I'm dancing with children, like a ring around the rosy type of thing. And these children are like maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, and I don't know the song. It's nothing that I learned here on the earth plane, but I remember singing this lovely, beautiful song. I was so happy. And the next thing you know is a man walks towards me and looks like as what I would perceive Jesus to look like. And he says to me, do you like it here? And I said, oh, I love it here, and so I look around and I'm dancing still, but I look around and I said, but where are my children? Because I had 2 young children at the time. And he says, well, it's not their time yet. And I said, oh, okay. So I continue to dance and sing, and I'm happy. And he says to me again, do you like it here? And I said, oh, yeah, I love it here. And again, but where are my children? And he says, it's not their time yet, and it's not your time yet either. You have yet to become who you were meant to be. Wow. So with that, I wake up and again have no clue what all of this means. So this is like 3, afterlife type of communications, and me still clueless. But what happened shortly after that, I received an invitation to participate in like a psychic fair and do readings. And that was the first time that I did readings. And from there, the rest is history.
Did the mediumistic qualities come naturally, or did you do something to further your abilities?
Yeah. So when I was small, when I was about 4 years old, I saw a spirit. I saw an old man in the basement when my mom was doing laundry, and I followed her. And, I saw, and it's a long story, so I know we don't have a lot of time, but I saw him a few times, and it was intimidating, and, I didn't understand it. And, when I pointed, over in the direction of where I saw him, my mom, she didn't acknowledge him, and she basically said, there's nothing there. Come on, let's go. So, I was a little confused. I thought maybe it was a secret. Maybe my eyes were fooling, me. So I never talked about it. So I only saw him a few times. And then shortly after that, I started hearing. So I had a little stuffed animal, a little lion cub that I had gotten when I was about 4 years old for Christmas. Her name was Leah. And, she was my favorite toy. I took her everywhere. But I thought that Leah started talking. So I was hearing spirit, but I thought it was my stuffed animal because I was young and didn't understand. And then when I started school, I stopped seeing and hearing. But what happened is I started knowing. So I kind of sailed all the way through high school without studying, and I was pretty much a straight A student. Things came, naturally to me. And once I left school, I started having premonitions. And again, didn't think anything unusual. And then those near-death experience happened. And then I started doing readings. And, when I started reading the cards, And to this day, I use the same deck I bought in 1991, the original deck. I still can't tell you the meanings of the tarot cards. So I don't read the traditional way. So I make these crazy piles and I work with my spirit team. But about 10 years into reading, I started hearing again, and and it was pretty much names. I started hearing names. And when I was giving readings, all my clients would say, well, that person's passed, and I'm like, well, geez, why am I getting all these, people's names that are dead? What's going on here? So I realized, that my readings were becoming mediumistic, and I took some classes. I trained with Janet Nohavec, and you know her, and sadly she's passed, and John Holland and Tony Stockwell. And so I took some classes to kind of, see what this was all about and what that looked like and what I can do to enhance my ability. So, yeah.
Well, that's tremendous. Before I go on, I'm looking at your itinerary, which is pretty darn impressive, and I realize that the first event that's on the list here is happening this Sunday at the Self-Care Center in Venice, Florida, where you will be on Sunday, April 14th and May 19th. And
Right.
if you are in the Venice, Florida area, you can look up the Self-Care Center on their website and get tickets for that. So that's a show this Sunday, and I'm telling you, it will be a great experience. My daughter, when she was growing up, had an imaginary friend called Leah. So
That's interesting.
Yeah. And also, I noticed in your when you talked about your first NDE, you mentioned this book. Would you consider that was probably the Akashic records that you were looking through, or do you have any significance that you?
All I know now that it was a life review, so I don't know, I don't know a lot. I feel silly saying it. I really don't know a lot about Akashic records, but I just know that it was a life review. I saw images and people, of, throughout my life, places I was, memories and things like that.
Hmm. And I'm very interested in the book. I know we've spoken at the retreats, and I always bring it up. You're writing a book.
Yeah.
And you weren't, but now you're actually in the process.
Yeah, I have like about 12, 13 rough chapters, but I keep learning more things as I go along. And so I keep adding to it. And then like I said, Spirit gave me a download and they wanted me to add some information about the soul that I'm going to include in there, some information that they gave me. So I'm just trying to figure how to make it all work together.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And I know I've been trying to assemble my book of memoir, and it's such a great experience because all the things you figured, well, I forgot half of the stuff I did, but as you write, it leads you. It opens up your memory.
Exactly. That's what I've been finding. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't remember this or I didn't remember that. So yeah, yep, absolutely.
Tremendous. Oh, we had something come up in our last retreat, and would like to get your take on it. When you do a group reading, we seem to have had somebody in a group reading who tried to, I guess everybody in the room said she was stealing somebody else's reading. They'd try every time the medium would suggest something, this person would say, oh, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. Do you get that kind of thing, and how do you handle it?
I lovingly refer to those people as the message hogs.
Yes.
Yes, I do. It happens pretty much all the time. And what I do is, as the medium, who you are with, right? Because you're directed by spirit. And And especially, I find that a lot of these people, I've already given them a message, right? But now I'm going around and they're still trying to grab other people's things. And I always say, because spirit is so clever, especially in a group setting, people are going to hear things that resonate with them. So I always just say to the people, I said, I acknowledge them and I thank them. And I said, but I tell them, but I know I'm with, this person over here. But if that means something to you and resonates with you, then just know that that's, your people in spirit, their way of letting, that they're still here or they're around you as well. Because you'll find that, you throw out something and there could be 3 or 4 people that it resonates with, but as the medium and spirit knows where to take you, who that really belongs to. But when there's a group like that, they're very clever. And just so that everybody can take a little piece of something home and feel good that their loved ones were present, I say, if it resonates with you, and especially if it's something, very specific and a name that's unusual, then, yes, that's your people letting you know that they're with you.
Yeah, I've heard the term saying piggybacking, where you will get
right.
more than one spirit trying to get a message through at the same time. So
right. That's where I got message hog. You get it? Piggybacking, message hog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't put that one together. That's a good one. Wow. So I thought that was pretty good. And this is another question that we get a lot asking about mediums, and you've got spirit coming to you. Do you have a method to turn them off, to let them know that you're off duty, as it were?
Sure. Yeah. And that's one of the basics, the fundamentals of, when you're learning mediumship, it's about boundaries. And that's really important. So, every medium has their relationship with spirit, and you set your boundaries. I used to get waken up quite a bit in the middle of the night and, feel a presence there and kind of yell out and, scare the bejeebies out of my husband, so, it's like, don't do that anymore in the middle of the night, so but you set your boundaries, and you don't want to be walking around in crowds, and especially if you're an empath and taking on everybody's energy and feelings. You've got to protect your energy and you've got to set boundaries. So I just tell spirit, I need you to come when I'm doing a reading, and not during other times. That's my me time.
Oh, it looks like we have a caller. Let's take a caller. We have Tim on the line. Tim, are you there?
I am. Good evening to you both.
You have a message, a question for Connie?
I do. So,
hi, Tim.
Hi, good evening. The typical mediumistic readings that I've watched, go something like the medium would say, either describe the person, and the person being read would say, oh, that's my grandmother. Or in some instances, the medium says, I have somebody coming through that's identifying themselves as your grandmother, something like that. I'm just curious, from a broader perspective, I've read the things out there that indicate, at least some people would believe, and the evidence that we live as a soul, we live more than one life. Ian Stevenson, Jim Tucker, Michael Newton, and others, would have gathered evidence that would indicate that. I'm just curious as to if you've ever done a reading and wound up with a situation in which somebody comes through and says, yes, I have your wife coming through, but she also was your grandmother who died before you were born, or something to that effect. So a person comes through and identifies themselves as more than one significant person in the life of the person being read.
Gotcha. Well, that's a very interesting question, and I have not got that question before. So to answer it, no, I have not had any being come through and identify themselves as two different people. because that's a little tricky because, my belief is that, because this leads into people ask, well, if somebody reincarnated, then how could I get in touch with them if they come down here as somebody else, right? So I think that's, when you reincarnate, your soul, just a piece of it comes down to the new human body, but the majority of it stays with the collective, like up there. So that's how communication can take place. But I don't know how that would work, because I feel like each soul is, even though they have reincarnated, it's kind of like they're individual. So I don't know about that, how they would come and identify themselves as two people. So that's very interesting. That's giving me something to think about, actually. Tom, what do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a series of books and actually recordings called Seth Speaks about a spirit named Seth, who has come channeled through an author, and his wife and husband together have collected these messages. And Seth describes it as you did, that your soul is existing on the other plane, of course, and it's kind of like an octopus. So it has tentacles, and one tentacle can be here now, that's you, whereas another tentacle could be in the 1700s, and another tentacle could be in the
exactly
50 or something like that. So you can be reincarnated somewhere, and yet that tentacle that was you here, that is still connected to the soul, is what you're communicating with. And to answer your question about, well, they can say, well, I was your grandmother, or I was, a distant relative or an ancestor. My answer to that would be, when you get a reading from a medium and spirit comes through, which is not an easy thing for spirit either. I heard Connie before talking about having to raise her vibration, because we're all vibrations. Even the table you're on is vibrating, because molecules are always moving. It's just they're moving so slow it looks solid to you, and we're moving faster, so we look like we're moving around and we're that. But when we pass over and we lose this body and become pure energy, then our vibration is very high. So for us to communicate, and what the great thing about mediums is they have an ability to raise their vibration up, whereas spirit has to bring its vibration down to a place where the two can communicate. And basically what spirit, I've seen in most readings, and Connie, you can back me up on this if you found it true too, is spirit. First of all, spirit wants you here. If your loved one's passed over, they, as Connie described, they go to this beautiful, beautiful place. When somebody says, do you like it here? Of course I like it here. It's beautiful and everything's, just fantastic. And they're just fine. And they look back at you down on earth, and you're grieving heavily. You're sad. They don't want you to be sad. They want you to finish out your life, because we're eternal beings, and eternity is thousands and thousands and thousands of years that we are existing. And this time on earth, which can be very short, or 100 years, it seems like a long time, but in the sense of thousands and thousands of years, 100 years is just a blip on the radar screen. And they know that you will join them again, you will see each other again, and they want to let you know that they're doing fine and everything's fine, and you should go try to enjoy your life, and then you'll meet up again. So what they tend to do is give you information so that you know that it's them. And if they start talking about the 1700s, or as you said, the grandmother, 100 years ago, if nobody in the room ever knew or known anything about, you have no way of validating that. So it's not information that a spirit will necessarily want to convey, because it doesn't do any good towards the ultimate goal of letting you know that your loved one still exists. How'd that sound, Connie? Did I get it right?
Yeah, I agree with it. And that's why, typically, mediums don't, or they shouldn't, bring through, like, I have your great, great, great grandfather, or, because you most likely won't be able to, validate, any of that evidence. So, and if you are, an evidential medium, and the purpose is to connect and, like you said, prove that our loved ones are still there, the spirit's going to bring through the types of details and information that are only pertinent and that you can validate.
Yeah, you're right. There's a validity that the medium provides. This is a process of expanding horizons. People go through their life, I think, every day, dealing with their issues, dealing with their problems, aches, pains, pain bills, etc. The mediums have allowed people not just to deal with grief, but also to put forth to the person being read that you are greater than just your body, that there's another essence of who you are that will, continue. And I was just looking at that, even, some evidence out there that indicates that that's even broader. It's not like you're one and done here. There could be potentially multiple lives. And as Connie indicated, what I've read and what you stated was your soul, when you incarnate, is not the complete soul. There's another one, that's in the afterlife and etc. So you're even this greater thing than you even could conceive of. So I was just wondering if you might have had something that would, through your readings, had validated that type of approach, that what's being put out there is a hypothesis and people putting out the information, whether you had anything to verify that. But thank you very much for your
You're welcome.
your insight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling in, Tim.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Here's a question that I've seen and heard asked, and I've heard kind of conflicting answers. Many people, or many mediums, say that they cannot read themselves. And I was curious if do you have your own family, loved ones that will come through to you, or do you need another medium to bring through personal things for you?
Well, I can feel, I have a mom and dad in spirit. I can feel their presence, and of course I get the signs from them, so I know that they're around. And it's so funny. It just happened today. As a matter of fact, I was got a couple of things going on, and I was just like, it's funny, me. I was like, Mom, Dad, if you could just help me out and let me know that these things are going to work out or be okay. I just have one or two things, and then I was like, well, I might have 5 things. So, I went down my list and I was like, let me know, give me a sign. And I was actually out somewhere, and all of a sudden over the radio, this song I've never heard before. It was an old country song. And it was like a ballad, one of those heartbreak ballad of, this woman and, she kills her husband or something. It was a strange, strange song. I've never heard it before. Wow. But it was like, and her name was Marianne, and my mother's name is Marianne. Huh. So it was just like, I was like, oh, wow, wait a minute, and it repeated like a couple times the name Marianne. So, I took that as a sign, like, okay, Herb, that they're with me. So, yeah, I feel like, and maybe that's individual too. I can't speak for other mediums, but, for me, I know if I ask, my parents like to give me a sign, they usually give me one. So I know that they're around.
Yeah, that seems to work out. Um, what kind of readings do you enjoy most? We also get questions about, whether over the phone or Zoom or large groups. If you had
Hmm.
your druthers, what would be your number one way to communicate?
Number one, I love the groups. I do. And I feel, I worked from home for the last, 15 years or so. So that gets me out. And I think that, my personality can come out too. I get to meet people. So I like that aspect of it. But also what I like is that in those groups, is where you're going to find the skeptics, right? It's the husband that gets dragged along by the wife or a friend or somebody. And that's where I feel like a lot of the times I can be impactful because I mean, part of my journey and the way that I was made to understand it is, before I do a group, I give an education. I talk about, how I started and, my abilities and where, that type of thing. But I talk about the Forever Family Foundation, but I talk about also how it works, the difference between psychic and medium and the clairs. I just give a brief little overview because I think it's important. Somebody could just get up and start spewing messages, but I think it's important for the audience to understand one, yes, this is difficult, raising the vibrations and how it's not easy for your loved ones in spirit and how those clairs work and how the messages come through. So I think that's important. And I have a lot of people thank me for that they like, me doing that. And the other thing about that is in the groups, is where the laughter happens. So that's one thing I think that I'm known for that, people in my groups, we're talking about grief. And you know what? Laughter is the best medicine because I always ask my spirit team to give me something quirky or, some, man or woman that may be of eccentric or there's something funny in the family. And you make people laugh and that cuts through the grief and also keeps that vibration up, right? So the messages can keep coming. And I think that's one of the things that I have really kind of honed in on. And that's become like a steady part of the way that I demonstrate and people come up afterwards because this is scary for a lot of people, like, especially based on maybe your religious beliefs or your upbringing. People don't know what to expect. So a one-on-one may not be the best way for them to get exposed to this, but, coming to a group, may be something that's a little bit better way to ease them into this. And I've got a lot of positive feedback that like, hey, we didn't know what to expect. We were nervous. We thought, we'd come in and a lot of people think you're going to come into a group and find, 20 wailing people, so distraught, right? They don't know what to expect. So they were like, well, this was great. This was uplifting. And that's really what I strive to do is, leave people uplifted. And so, in the personal readings, which I love to do as well, but that's where you're going to have sometimes more of the serious nature ones and the ones that where, people are really, the hard grief and the things like that. But in the groups, a little bit more laughter and uplifting can come through. So I really enjoy those.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, that's huge. In fact, as I attend these grief retreats, and they're a weekend long. It's Friday through Sunday, and we do 4 a year. And yeah, people show up. You can tell they're hurting, and then yet Connie or someone else will do a group reading, and I'll look around the room, and I've seen people smiling and laughing, and then by the end of the weekend, people are much lighter. Their grief has been somewhat alleviated, and I think that's really tremendous. And you hit the nail on the head with an entertaining and lighthearted reading session. it's the healing is tremendous in that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I always tell them too, when I'm giving my little spiel in the beginning, I tell them, I said, you can expect to cry. Some people will cry. I always say I don't do my job until at least one person cries, right? But I said, right. I said, but we're going to laugh too. And I say, and I let everybody know, in no way do I want to, dismiss anybody's grief or anything like that. But I explained to them about the vibration, and that when you're doing a group, not only do I have to lift my vibration, but I have to keep the whole group up as well. Because if you're talking about a tough passing and the person's in front of you crying, I can't step into their grief, or else my vibration will sink down low. So I explained that to them. So I said there are going to be times where I may say something a little silly or something, and that's just so that we can make sure that we keep the vibration up for the group. So
that's tremendous, and you do it very well, I must say. And you also said earlier that you were doing things from home and you like to get out. Well, I can't let the show go by without saying how much you're getting out these days. I mentioned the self-care center in Venice, Florida this Sunday, but then you also, next Sunday, April 21st, you're going to be in Lakewood Ranch. Where is Lakewood Ranch?
That's in between Bradenton and Sarasota.
Okay, in Florida as well.
In Florida, yes.
Okay, so if you're in that area and would like to see Connie do her readings, Sunday, April 21st and May 31st at the Yoga Bear, the Lakewood Ranch. That's not Yogi Bear. It's not Yogi Bear. It's Yoga.
Yoga bar. Yoga bar.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's a place. Also, I see that you're, I mentioned, on October 25th, it's a ways away. It's a special event, an evening of meaningful messages from heaven in Poughkeepsie, New York. So anybody in the New York Poughkeepsie area, you will want to get in on that. And if you're listening to this radio show, you can get in on an advance notice here. The event has not been advertised yet. It'll be advertised in a couple of months. But if you want to reserve a space before the event is announced, you can email Connie directly. And her email address is Connie@meaningfulmessages.info. Meaningful Messages, all one word. That's Connie@meaningfulmessages.info. If you're in the Poughkeepsie area in New York, and you are free on October 25th, you want to do that. The weekend before that, as I mentioned, there are some spots open for the Forever Family Foundation Grief Retreat in California. That's in San Jose, California. Registration is open for that, and we have 40 people signed up, so there's a good 10 or 12 spots still open for that one. And you can get the info for that on the foreverfamilyfoundation.org website. And also on, is it the same weekend that you're going to be presenting at the IANDS conference in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yeah, the IANS conference, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. So that's the August 28th through September 2nd, I believe. So yeah, I'll be presenting there for that conference. Yeah.
A space here that I didn't see that. So that August 28th through September 1st, that should be very interesting and wonderful. And then I got it also listed May 18th. Something called Mediumship 101, Learning the Basics. I guess this is something you're teaching then.
Yep, I started teaching this year, so I've done online courses. This will be my first in-person course at the Lakewood Ranch again, in the yoga bar in Lakewood Ranch. And then April 27th, I am teaching an online course through the Journey Within. And you can go to their website to register for that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's fantastic to see that you're out and sharing this with people, because it really really means a lot. And I have firsthand witnessed the healing that it does for people, and all the good it does for people. I talk to people a lot, obviously, about this sort of thing, and I I'm reminded of if I made a little story of a couple that came to our grief retreat once, and on Friday night they came in, and when they registered, I mean, they were as glum as could be. These people, a man and his wife who had lost a young son at a Boy Scouting accident, and they just were devastated. And that's Friday night. And Friday we had our speaker was this guy Dave Kane, who used to be a stand-up comedian. He's a radio show host. He lost his son in the fire, the nightclub fire in Rhode Island many years ago, and since then he has seen so many signs and whatnot that he wrote a book, 41 Signs. And when he does his presentation as a former stand-up comedian, he's pretty darn funny. And the whole place was just rip-roaring with laughter, except for this couple that were glum, sour. Saturday night, we had a bonfire. They were still sort of moping around all day Saturday. And then we had a medium who was at the around the bonfire, and she was immediately drawn to this couple, and she went straight across and sat with this couple and gave them a reading, 15 minutes with them. And then the next morning at breakfast, these two came in and they were smiling and they were saying hi to people, and it was just it blew me away. And I thought right then and there, I thought, if you were to go to a psychologist, and I'm not disparaging them, they can be wonderful for you, but how many sessions would you have to go to before you got that kind of change? And people tell me, I get also plenty of people who will tell me, Tom, this isn't really real, and I say, okay, I'll accept that. This is all hooey. These people aren't doing anything, paranormal. They're just good at making it sound that way. If you accept that, you still have to accept the good and the healing that is done. So, I mean, I happen to know what you do is the real deal in that, but don't be as a skeptic and say that you guys should be driven out of town or tarred and feathered or whatever they think that should happen to mediums. But the good that mediums do is priceless, really.
Yeah, and those grief retreats, are so transformational for the people there. They really, I love doing them. They touch my heart so much so. I mean, I have to blame you guys, the Forever Family Foundation, because I had to leave my corporate job in January because I couldn't stay engaged. I just wanted to do this work more and more and more, and I knew I was getting pushed toward it. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to do this. I want to dedicate, myself full time to doing this because, it's just life changing, to make that kind of difference in someone and help them heal. And the other thing I think that's important that, sometimes people don't understand, mediumship is just not about grieving for people that have lost someone. It's about healing trauma. And there are so many readings that I do where maybe, someone lost a father that maybe, was an alcoholic or abusive or something like that. They had childhood trauma or, in a relationship that, ended badly and there was some trauma going on there. Where else can that person come back and say, I'm sorry and offer an apology? So this is, I find this so many times, that, the people come through, and of course they want to apologize, and if they could take it back, and that is so healing. So, I think people a lot of times associate mediumship with grief and the grief of loss of a loved one. Yes, that's true, but it's also the grief from the trauma and, those open wounds that they never have closure because they never had a chance because that person that caused that trauma, passed without saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have noticed that a lot. And the sitter tends to go, so, well, I've got your father coming through, and they're like, I don't want to hear from that guy. He was horrible,
Right.
abusive, and every single time the guy is coming through to apologize. And
right.
And that,
and I always tell people sometimes it's not who you want to hear from, it's who you need to hear from.
yes. Yeah, I wanted to interject that too for anybody out there who has never been to a reading or would curious about getting a reading, is that you have to clear your mind and not have expectations. It was
Right.
I had a friend who his father came through for the reading, and they told him all of this sort of stuff, and we said after the reading, that sounded fantastic. What'd you think? He goes, well, he didn't mention about my drumming, It's like you can never tell with a sitter,
Right.
Do you ever encounter negative energy, or is there something you can do to not to, or is there concentrated negative energy to even worry about?
I have never encountered negative energy. I always believe, and I mean, I believe that this work is done with positive energy and, from a place of love. So, I don't believe if you're doing this work, you should be bringing in negative energy.
Yeah, it seems to me that when I hear about people with near-death experiences, invariably when they talk about their visit to the other side, that they're struck with the feeling of immense love, that love is the dominant
Yes.
energy when you cross over. And it just seems to me that negative energy doesn't really have a place.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Anything else that I didn't cover that you'd like to make sure we talk about? We've got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, well, my special event in October in Poughkeepsie is going to be at the Cooney Hackett Theater, so it's a pretty large theater. So I'm hoping people will show up. So I'll start advertising that. So it holds 250 people. So we'll see. I hope to have a nice crowd there, and that's part of. I want to start, making some a little tour and going around. So having said that. I will be moving to the East Coast, hopefully shortly, the East Coast of Florida. But if you'd like me to come out your way to do a group, whether it's a private group in your home or a fundraiser or a charity or a large group, just, contact me because I will travel. I'm going to try to set up a nice schedule going into next year to start, traveling around and doing these, group demonstrations.
And one other question. What kind of wait list do you have? I imagine you've got them backed up of people trying to schedule readings.
Yeah, well, now that I'm not working my other corporate job, usually I'm about 6 weeks or so. 6 weeks waiting list. Yeah.
Okay. So it's doable.
It's doable.
I guess
I read every day.
well, tremendous. And so that's not a terribly long wait list. I'm sure it's going to grow for you, and I want to encourage the audience who's listening that now is a good time to see what Connie can do, and you don't have to wait that long. So again, you can reach out by email to Connie@meaningfulmessages.info. And the website, of course, is www.meaningfulmessages.info. And if you contact Connie directly, that will be a great experience for you, I'm sure. And it's been a great experience talking with you tonight, and looking forward to seeing you in California.
Likewise, I can't wait.
Thanks, Connie. And with that, we say that our loved ones are only a heartbeat away, and science is going to accept it. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.